breakfast or Toastmaster. So, see if I can get this to work here again. It did work right before we started. Oh, there we go. So something that most people don't know about my husband, even some of his close friends, is that he is a wonderful cook. You can see that if this slide would turn. He has a passion for being in the kitchen. He actually went so far as to take courses at a culinary school, and I benefit from this greatly. I, on the other hand, am not a natural born cook. I like to be in the kitchen. I think that I can follow a recipe fairly easily, but at the end of my cooking experience, Jeff always comes in at the end to flavor up my dishes. This is both irritating and necessary. So when I heard that this project for my speech was to research something and learn about something that I'd really like to learn about, I was pretty excited. And no, it wasn't to learn about how to become a better chef, because there can be too many cooks in the kitchen and all that. But I did think that I could contribute to the kitchen in another way, and that was to learn how to grow an herb garden, something that I've always wanted to learn how to do. So I decided, it's part of the process of becoming an adult, right? You meet your spouse, grow your career, get married, and grow an herb garden. And I feel like there's something so satisfying about growing your own ingredients, and not to mention the fact that if you need like a tablespoon of something for a recipe, you have to spend $3 at the store on way too much of it. So the idea of going out to the backyard and grabbing what I need is tantalizing. So I started my research at Suburban Lawn and Garden. I don't know why this isn't working, but I'm just gonna go back here and flip the slides. This is about as far as I got at Suburban Lawn and Garden. The overwhelming nature of this made me turn it back around and go to my car. I don't even know the difference between annuals and perennials at this point. So I decided, okay, I'll go to Barnes & Noble and see what they have. They have this whole section on gardening. And I was a little bit surprised with how much of the gardening section was devoted to growing marijuana. But I did happen to find a book that I took home with me called Kitchen Gardening for Beginners. So I took this, I went home, and I read, and with this, the internet, and most namely YouTube, I was able to learn about herb gardening. And I'd like to share with you what I learned. And that is that herb gardening is really easy. You only need 4 things. You need sun, soil, water, and a little tender loving care. So, as far as sun goes, plants need about 4 to 8 hours of sun a day, but it depends on how hot your climate is. So if it's below 90 degrees, you can put your herbs out in the sun, they can get full sun. But if it's over 90 degrees, as it happens to be in the summer or later in the afternoon, then you want to make sure you have some shade or filtered light, like trees that would cast some shade over your herbs. And that's perfect because our backyard is set up just that way. As far as soil goes, if you're planting your herbs on the ground, then you want to make sure that you loosen the compacted soil, because when it comes to plants and herbs, the roots are everything. And what I learned is that roots need nutrients, they need oxygen, and they need water, right? They're a lot like us. So you want to loosen that compacted soil and then add some compost and mix it in, because that gives the plants the nutrients they need to suck up. I am not going to plant in the garden, in the actual ground. I am going to take the easy route, and I'm going to pot these plants. And not only that, I'm going to start with already grown plants this year, because this is the first timer here. But in the future, I'd like to grow from the seed. So if you're going to take the shortcut like me and you're going to plant in a pot, you want to use something simple like Miracle-Gro, which has all the nutrients in it that your plant needs, as well as the appropriate amount of water absorption and oxygen ratio that your plant needs. So, potting mix. Now on YouTube, I found this wonderful little example of how to pot a plant. So those of you who don't know, you want a pot that has a hole in it so that you have drainage. And then you would add some sort of rocks or pottery that's broken up in order to allow for even better drainage. Then you add your soil, or your Miracle-Gro in this instance. It's as simple as this. You just make a hole and you add your plant. But before, you know how they grow the plants in those little plastic containers? You want to make sure you take it out and kind of separate the roots a little bit before you put it into the pot, because you want the roots to grow outwards and be strong and healthy and rooted, but you also don't want to damage the roots when you do this. Then you put it in the hole and you cover it with some soil, and there you go. You have an herb plant, right? This is some parsley, but that plant still needs a drink. So just like us, plants need water. And so a rule of thumb that I learned is that you want to maintain enough dampness for the plant. If you stick your finger in the soil, that you can feel dampness about an inch or two below the soil. You don't, though, want to drown your plant, so be careful not to overwater. Just like us, plants need oxygen, so don't drench your plant. And lastly, a little bit of tender and loving care for your plant. One thing that I learned about herbs, and they're all different. So all herbs have their different ways you might want to cut them, but it's fairly simple. The one thing that makes all herbs in common is that if they start to bloom flowers, you want to pick those off, and preferably before they even flower. So like basil plants, they'll actually have a little flower grow, and when they do that, they're trying to grow seeds, and they're using all of their energy to grow the seeds. They actually change their chemical makeup, and they become a different flavor. So with basil, I learned it's more bitter flavor than it is sweet that you might want. And then with most plants, if they get to be 6 to 8 inches high, you can just cut back about 1/3 of the plant, and you should be fine. You really can't go wrong with this. And then what I learned, again, with the basil plant is you want to cut close to this leaf intersection, because this will allow for branching out of new leaves. So you get like 2 new fresh branches just from that cut. And they grow upwards. So the leaves that are on the bottom absorb the sun and give strength to the rest of the plant. So that's what I learned about herb gardening in about 4 hours this weekend. And the funny thing about it is my husband and I went to Home Depot with this great intention to start on Tuesday. And we were there for about 2 hours. We got all our plants, potting soil in the first 30 minutes, and we couldn't figure out what kind of pot we wanted to use. And we haggled with the guys in hardware. How are we going to hang this on our fence? So we ended up giving up and leaving with nothing. So I know I said herb gardening is easy, but figure out where you're going to plant your herbs maybe before you go to Home Depot. I hope you all have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, and maybe some of you will be out in the garden trying this out. Thank you.